Would you like to build a community of like-minded individuals for what is coming in the future? And would you like to learn from someone who's been doing it? Hey, everybody, welcome to the Freedom Lovers Show. We are building a voluntary world, one relationship at a time. This is David James Rodriguez, and I want to welcome you because we have a very special guest today, someone who's been off grid for some years, a successful entrepreneur, and he's going to share some of the insights with an idea that I just learned from him called intentional neighborhoods. And I learned about this idea from him at an event in Florida with Jim Gale. The event was called Path to Freedom. And many of you guys know there's a mass awakening happening of freedom and self-ownership and personal responsibility. And so the question is, do we have to do it alone? And there's the idea of intentional community. Some of you have seen the last conversation we had, but his idea was very attractive. And the fact he's been doing it for a long time, I think is very interesting and something that you guys would learn a lot from. And his name is Meyer, and he is the founder of Grid Down, the founder of freesteading.com, a website you guys may have heard of, and a successful entrepreneur in general. So we're very grateful to have you on the show, Tag, and so many things to talk about. But first of all, welcome to the Freedom Lover Show.
Hey, I like to be in anything that starts with freedom. Right, you're talking my language. But thanks for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Absolutely, man. It's a joy to meet you and hear your short talk there in Florida. And that's what we were just talking about before, is that this whole pandemic has brought so many good minds together, good men and women that realize what's going on. And it seems that the political system is not the answer. If anything, information and education platform, but we're stepping into, as I spoke about there on the stage, my talk was about self-ownership and respect for self-ownership. This seems to be the next phase from the monarchy to constitutional republicanism to voluntarism, where we acknowledge that we're all self-owners, kings and queens of ourselves, and personally responsible for everything that happens to us in life. So this idea of intentional neighborhoods, why don't you share a little bit with the audience what this idea is and maybe how it formulated and anything that you think might be relevant for their understanding.
Yeah, you bet. So the whole idea of intentional neighborhoods, or the theory of it, came after a whole bunch of tribulation. And, I was part of some other groups, and I learned some hard lessons in those groups. And the big lesson that came out of it to me was that the reason why intentional communities don't really work is because there's this thing called sovereignty. And how is it that we can live a life of freedom and then push rules and stuff onto other people? It just doesn't work. So, all these people go onto one piece of land, and one person owns this piece of land, and people are human and all of these things. So me and another buddy of mine started thinking about, how do we get out of that? How do we get people who are motivated, driven, have skin in the game? How do we get out of this mentality? And so we decided we were going to build a town. So instead of a piece of land where everybody would come, we would take over a town and then a county, which we've successfully done. And so the intentional neighborhood idea is that, it's so, let me take a step back. People ask me all the time, well, how many people live on your land? Yeah. Well, the answer is me and my family. That's it. Okay, so I own my land. My land is sovereign. I make the rules of my property. We live by, right? I have sovereignty here. So what we started doing was trying to encourage like-minded people to buy up land around us. And it started very, very slow. Getting to 1 was really hard. Getting to 5 was really hard. But pretty quick, what happens is it begins to gain this momentum to where here we are today, where we have collectively, we have 1,200 acres of land in a small area. And they're all individual homesteads. Like I said, I personally own 40 of that 1,200. And people have come in, they've bought land on my YouTube channel. I often, if there's a nice piece of land for sale, I'll do a video on it. And people ask me all the time, like, aren't you scared of who you're going to bring in? There's a lot of weird people out there. But the fact of the matter is I would rather have the like-minded unknown than just the unknown, right? Because at the end of the day, someone's going to buy it up. So I might as well get someone who's like-minded, because at the end of the day, we don't have to all be best friends, right? But can we all push the same type of agenda? Yep. So we began to do that. We built it, and since then we've gone on to build medical systems. We are working on education systems. We're working on, dealing with the local school boards, the local commissions, and some of us sit on some of those positions. And ultimately, the long-term plan for us is to do what I started this message with, was we're going to build a town, and it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort. But I'm super excited about it because we are growing by just mass Last year I think we added 7 new families, probably on an average acreage of 50 acres or more, added to our community who are now productive members, and certainly nice for me because then I don't have to carry all the weight. That make
Absolutely.
sense?
Beautiful. That's beautiful. So what I heard was 1,200 acres. You have 40.
Mhm.
So would it? I think when I first asked you about it, there's a few hundred families or a few dozen families, or how many are there now within this certain radius? And what is the radius?
Yeah. So now you're talking about the community question.
Yeah.
And so I probably should share with you the way I view community, because to ask me how many people are in the community, I can't answer the question because which community? Let me explain what I mean by that.
Yep.
So the first thing is I think all community and all sovereignty starts with the clan. So for example, I have the tag clan, right? Me, my wife, and my kids.
Mhm.
We're the tag clan and we are sovereign. And if you get a couple clans together, you have a crew. So if you're talking about from a crew perspective, there's probably 70 of us around this area who do it every day, those kind of things. But if you get a couple of those crews together, you can build a mag, and that mag is, all for maybe a 200-mile circle. That's got 1,100 people in it. But then you go a little bit further, and you get enough of that together, you can build the mind, the like-minded. And David, you were part of my mind.
Mhm.
So how many people is that? I hope millions,
Yeah.
right?
Got it.
So to answer that question, which community? Because there's more than
Yeah.
one, right?
So yeah, great point. When what how I see it too is like concentric circles,
Yes,
right? So you have your
yes,
next one,
yes.
and this turns out I think is a very successful model in life, because it's like, yeah, you can't be best friends with a million people, but maybe 50,
Yes.
or 20. There's a crew. It's a great name there, a crew.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
and by the way, it's super. All of them play a super important role, and we can get
yes.
deep into this as you want to. But the fact of the matter is, the clan can't exist without the crew, and the crew can't exist without the mag, and the mag without the mind. And they're all interlinked because that's how we do commerce. That's how we do so many other things, right? At the end of the day, not one person can own a salt mine, a sugar plantation, and a sawmill. I mean, at the end of the day, if we're ultimately going to take this back and we're ultimately going to create our own system, it's going to require commerce.
Yeah.
And so you need all of these interlocking circles.
Mhm. Yeah, so many good ideas coming up right now. First off, because I think the purpose of this conversation, one of them for me, is to help people duplicate what you've done. So just based on what I heard so far, I think the audience and I are like, we want to do this. So the
Yeah.
question is, you can either join tag, or you can get your own capital together, get your own team together, and go do it. Because for what's going on the planet, we need probably millions of these types of little things, intentional neighborhoods. What's the high level for the step-by-step process to begin? You said the hardest thing was one family or 5 families. So let's talk about that, because there's a lot of work to be done here. And people need to realize we got to take a look in the mirror and address that we've been asleep for a few generations. And now we're coming out of the slumber and we're like, man, we're responsible for this life. We're like, yeah, we are, buddy. So
Yeah.
let's help each other. So,
Yeah.
so that initial part, the learning pains in the beginning, what's that? Finding the land, choosing the county, choosing the state, anything like this?
Yeah. So goodness, there's a lot to unpack right there.
Yeah.
First thing is in what you said there is I would welcome people to continue to join our area because we're getting stronger and stronger every day.
Mhm.
But with that said, we need these communities everywhere. We need these
Yeah.
neighborhoods everywhere because again, ultimately that's how we create our own parallel systems, right? This is how we do it, is to interlock all of those things together. The next point that I think I would make is it wasn't that hard. And let me
Mhm.
explain what I mean by that. Is that at the end of the day, now let me ask you a question. Are you a gardener?
This is my second year gardening, and I realize there's a big learning curve there too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, I'm a gardener. I'm a
Okay.
gardener, but I'm a
Okay.
young.
So let me ask you, David, why do you weed the garden?
I think I weed the garden so it doesn't take the nutrients out of the soil.
See, building community and building these neighborhoods is no different. All you have to do is be intentional. It has to become part of your everyday process. It has to become part of your every week process. No different than weeding a garden. When it comes time to weed the garden, now we try to build systems where we don't have to weed, right? But
Mhm.
when it comes to weed the garden, we just have to schedule it. It has to be part of it. And so you have to be intentional. If David, I get email after email after email from people who are saying, "Man, I can't find anybody. I can't
Yeah.
find anybody." And I always ask them, "What are you doing?" Nothing.
Mhm.
Well, that's why you can't find anybody. Right? You got to get up and you got to go do something about it. And you got to be intentional. And I have met community members. I'll tell you some stories of how I've met them.
Mhm.
I'm just so we're kind of on this, so I can kind of
Yeah.
explain it to folks. So there's someone who I think super highly of in our community who was loading corn for their chickens at Tractor Supply, and I helped him load it in the trunk. See, I made an intentional step to walk up and go, "Hey, man, can I help you?" And then you start chit chatting and you say, "Hey, man, ain't this world an interesting place?" Oh my goodness, they start, and next thing you know, you're buddies, and it begins from there. The other thing, there were two last year who moved to our area, who I met when I was speaking at the Self Reliance Festival. When I got done speaking, they came up to me and said, "Tell us more."
Yeah.
So the point is, you have to be open. You've got to be willing to put your neck out on the line a little bit. You got to be willing to take a little bit of risk. But the fact of the matter is, if you're a good person and you're honest and you're upfront and you give a shit, it's not that complicated. It's really just not that complicated. And then what happens is, once you get 4 or 5 or 6 together, now you're having meetings. And now those meetings get to talk about, how do we educate our kids better? What are we going to do about medical insurance? Everyone told me in the beginning, you can't deal with medical. This is why communities won't work. Well, bet. But because you can, because we did. But the point is, you just got to be intentional. It's all it is. It's got to make it. If you want it more, if you want it as bad as you want that, that cup of Starbucks, if you want it, you can have it. You just have to go do it. And I know because I did it.
That's right. Yeah. And what the audience is noticing is the leadership and the communication and the clarity. And that's what I've noticed too, is that the more we get clear on what we're after. And so you've met people at events, you met people just being a nice guy at the grocery store or the market. And so, like you, I'm looking for people to meet. I'm looking for opportunities, and especially at events. So if you audience members go out to events, make it your mission to make 5 new friends at event or 10 new friends, and find you. Like you said, you're not going to be best buds with everybody, but you can be allies. You can be partners in building this voluntary world and this free world for the children and the grandchildren. But it's going to take some initiative. It's going to take being proactive, because we've been asleep for so many years, and we just had this comfort and we didn't even know these things. This is, maybe some of the audience members know, just so you know, I'm in the education world and I'm a principal of a private school. I do early high school graduations, and I published a book by John Taylor Gatto about the history of the school system. So we were intentionally made to be consumers, clerks, soldiers, and just absent of our own life and the preciousness of this existence, and just be a cog in the wheel for the manufacturers and the Industrial Revolution and all that stuff. So it's like, now we're starting to realize, like, life is precious. Like, you're significant, listener, and Tag is, and I am, and like, we're all important. And we've been taught that life is not important, and just go kill millions of people, and no big deal, and just so. But we're like, back to, I think consciousness is rising, and people are starting to realize, like, this is a big deal to be a human, to be on this earth, and especially in America. So that brings up a question: is where are you located? What county or state, or does that matter in the selection of your land?
Yeah, so it's not super critical as far as county goes, because the counties are relatively small, and so we have them in several different counties. But I live in the northeast corner of Kansas.
Okay.
Is where I live, and they're in our community. And again, you got to define which community, right? But the closer in communities are all located right here, up in that northeast corner. Something you said, though, if you don't mind, I want to touch on real quick, that I think it's really, really important. There came a time for me and where I lost my career over COVID, and after going through all of that, I had a great career, paid me lots of money, life was good. But after that, I come to the realization that I had to take control of my own life.
Yeah.
That I could not be a slave and, have this constant carrot in front of my face and go through this and have any kind of life with meaning. The idea of working my whole life for this company, and then to be so disposable that something as simple as a political disagreement, how could one person or one company have so much stroke over me? I had to take responsibility for my own life. And I think this is a super important point that the audience needs to hear, is you got to take accountability. Everything in life that happens to you is your fault, period.
Yes.
Right? Because it's your decisions that put you there. Now, it doesn't relieve the other person from their bad doings, but you have to take accountability for the part of it you had. And it's my fault. I ended up losing my career because I aligned myself with a company with those types of values, period. And once I came to that realization and I took accountability for my life, bud, I'm telling you, it's easy now. It's easy.
Yep. This is, again, what schools don't teach is personal responsibility. And what you said is amazing because 100% responsibility, that's the superpower. Once we
Yes.
accept
Yes.
100% personal responsibility, it's no longer the government or other people. It's like you look in the mirror, and this is why I believe what's happening is the inner awakening is happening, where we're starting to understand, okay, I must learn, I must do,
Yeah.
I must collaborate with people.
Yeah.
And I think the future is going to be about contracts and these types of things. So let's talk about the medical systems that you guys created, because this whole idea, which I got this from Derek Bros and John Bush, the exit and build strategy, which is just exit their systems and build the world that you want to see.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's going to be schools, hospitals,
Mhm.
grocery stores, media platforms, these types of things. And that's I think amazing that you're doing freesteading.com. But let's talk about the medical stuff and then we'll do the
Yeah.
freesteading.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the medical stuff what you set up that
Yeah.
people might be able to learn from?
Yeah, so what's funny is all that I set up was the idea. All I set up was I had the conversation, right? I was intentional. So we
Mm,
found a like-minded doctor who wasn't very far from us, and it took about 2 years of talking to
mhm,
convince him to open his own private clinic that would offer no, that would to accept no insurance.
mm,
And so it was a lot of work and a lot of help, and can we come help you put a building up, and all of these kind of things to
yep.
getting there. And what started, 5 years ago with one clinic, there's now six, and they're all
Mm,
over the northeast corner of Kansas. So basically, it's a direct care system. I personally pay $75 a month, and I go there for all my basic needs. If I break a bone, if I need stitches, if I need antibiotics, whatever it is in life that I need, I just go directly to them. It's actually funny. I love how it works. There's lockers outside of the building, and I can call up and say, "Hey, I'm not feeling very good. Can I get a prescription for whatever?" And he'll ask me a bunch of questions. And assuming that he thinks I need what I think I need, he'll say, "Okay, yeah, I'll be in locker number 2. Here's the combination." And I'll drive up there and I'll take care of it. And I'll never have to see anybody, nothing. They're very
Wow.
personable. They're into alternative medicine as well. They're into a complete approach of it. But I don't have any ownership in it. All I did was plant the seed and
Mm,
then just continue to help and support. And then once they opened a clinic, I made sure everybody I knew was going there, that we were patronizing this business and we were making sure that they were going to be here to stay. And so it's not something we as a community own or operate. All we did is plant the seed, and now we have it.
wow. So you just planted the idea and
Mhm.
then he saw that there was a market for it and just
Yep,
basically went and did that himself?
that's right.
Wow.
That's right. And
Wow.
we do the Midwest Preparedness Project out here twice a year, which is a big festival here in Kansas. They come out and speak about alternative medicines. They come out and speak about all of these things. They love the community. They love what's going on. They're involved in our community. Both main doctors there are, I would consider, community members, but they own it themselves. There's no community, communal ownership of it. That's their
Hmm.
business. We just
Yeah.
encourage them to be an entrepreneur.
Mm. Yeah. So you talking, I mean, 2 years of talking, that's enough time where they can start to think,
Yeah.
oh, there's a market here and it's a business thing. Like you mentioned, commerce. This is what it's about is we want to help each other
Yep.
become wealthy, have our successful businesses, because that's where people go when they're getting paid well or making good
Yep.
money or there's
Yep.
opportunity for
Yep.
growth and these kind of things. That's all we want is just to have a nice life full of health, abundance, relationships, these kind of
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
this is what we can do. And this is what you're doing out there in Kansas. So that's very exciting. How about the grocery store situation? What do you guys deal with, or how do you guys deal with food? Or is
Yeah.
it, do you go to local grocery stores or farmers, or what do you guys do there in your neighborhood?
Yeah, so kind of a mix of all of it. So we have every single homestead in our area, and I worded it that way on purpose because not everybody has a homestead. There's people inside the community that live in the city, but every single homestead pretty much has a large gardening presence, right? We're all growing, large amounts of food. I'm a 100% off-grid homesteader, and I have cows and chickens and geese and turkeys and all kinds of stuff out there. And we do a lot of bartering with each other, and so every year. Will grow a huge variety of things and sometimes not to eat. And for example, there's another like-minded lady here who owns the Buffalo Seed Company. And so they sell bioregionally adapted seeds all over the country. We are one of their growers. So like last year, I grew tobacco for them and I grew some of these things, which then turns into, other barter situations and those kind of things. So we have part of our own economy, but there's still some things when we talk about living off grid, there's a difference between off grid living and off matrix living. Those are not the same thing, right? I'm off grid. I have no utility bills. I have no mortgage. I have none of those things. But I'm still dependent on the system for some things. I don't know anybody who makes oil filters.
Right.
Right. I mean,
Right.
right. So there's a line there somewhere. So in reference to food, a large percent of it, I could produce about 70% of my food personally. With community, I might get into the 80s, but I'm still in need, right, to buy some things. And so we just keep trying to increase that level of freedom. We call it in our community, we call it the ungovernable score. And I actually have a calculator that tells you these things. But anyway, we just keep trying to increase those each time. So we're not 100% free from a food independence perspective, but we're getting closer all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great thing. You said the ungovernable score is like a game. It's
Yeah,
like a ranking of like
it is.
how free are we, or how much
Yeah,
dependent on the system. And with 70 or 80%, that's free in my opinion, because
yeah.
I've
Well,
noticed, man, I'm dependent on the grocery store and I don't like that. And
yeah,
if they thankfully I'm in a conservative county, but when the whole pandemic went down, I was in a very lefty statist
yeah.
county, and you had to wear a mask to go into Trader Joe's. And it's like, this ain't good, guys. What the
Yeah.
hell's going on around here? We're like
Yeah.
mass tyranny, man. That's what's going on around here.
Yep.
So yeah, the food stuff.
Yeah, when I just so I tell you about the whole score
Yeah,
thing, when I
sure.
first took the ungovernable score, when it all started, I scored a 31 because
Mm,
there's an actual calculator that we enter the data into. And because it's just a game, it's just gamification, right? It's a way to keep us motivated and to keep us driving. But I scored a 31 and I'm at a 78 today. And I've
mm.
made that jump from 31 to 78 in 5 years. You can do this. You just have to do it. You got to be intentional.
That's beautiful. Did you invent the ungovernable score?
Well, I invented the idea, right? And you'll hear this a lot from me. I planted the seed, right? And I know a buddy of mine from business who is an Excel superstar. I mean, that's all
Mm,
he does all day long. And I said, hey, I want to build this. Will you help me? He goes, heck yeah, I'll help you. So we talked about the different categories, and community plays a role in being free, right? Your finances play a role, your health, your habits. Do you have any bad habits? That plays a role. And we just put this all stuff in, and he made this beautiful calculator, and it's been downloaded many, 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 many times. But it's not meant to be this serious thing. It's meant to be a game to keep us motivated.
yeah,
That's
that's
all it
right.
is.
That's right. Yeah, I had this realization this last week or two, was like, we get to rebuild civilization.
Yeah.
It's not like this bad thing. It's like, no,
Oh,
we've been down like this for so long, and now we get to do it. This is, instead of like, oh, we have to, we're going to starve. It's like, no, this is a good thing.
yeah.
We're going to be free. And like in your situation, if the grid goes down or
Mhm.
whatever the governments do, it sounds like you in your neighborhood, you guys are going to probably be okay. Would you
Mhm.
would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and as long as it all depends on what rules get changed, right? But
Mm,
but yeah, and generally, I mean, there's been times right here in my neighborhood, no, 5 or 6 times the last couple of years where the power's been out. I've never lost power. Of course, I have my own. We call it the Freedom Electrical Co-op. But there's been times where the water, where somewhere around here was on a boil order, for example. Well, I have the Jericho water treatment facility. I don't need to worry about that kind of stuff, right? I depend on myself. So yeah, I think we can make it a long ways. Just because we're very self-reliant.
what is a boil order?
So sometimes what'll happen I don't know how much this happens in cities so much because I live way out in the middle of nowhere, but a lot of times, like in a rural water or a district, a test will come back funny and they'll say, hey, boil your water for the next 24 hours until we can get it chlorinated right or whatever.
Mm-hmm,
And those things happen all over the country, but not for me.
mm-hmm. So you have a well on site, or I don't know what else you have, like a rain
Yeah,
catchment or
so
something.
yeah, so I have 3 water sources, and what's interesting about that is that I can use any of them I want to at any time. So, for example, my wife can wash clothes in rainwater on one side of my house and take a shower in rainwater at the other side exactly at the same time. So
Mm,
I have a 100-foot deep well. I have 7,700 gallons of rainwater storage, and I have a 2.5 acre pond, and I can use all of them.
mm. That's beautiful. Yeah, I did see a little bit about that on your YouTube channel, just so
Yeah,
the audience knows. Life Done Free YouTube channel. He goes over some of these things, and
yeah,
it's just like so exciting to hear. It's like, okay, it takes time and effort and probably
yeah,
some capital, but what else are we gonna do? It's
right.
time to learn these things. And so, did you have a background in construction and like this kind of stuff? You learned it all.
No, I was a suit and tie guy, but I spent 23 years running financial holding companies, and I had 900 employees when I lost my career.
Nice.
And so no, but when I got serious, and I'm kind of wired that way, I got my teeth into something, And I
Yeah.
started researching, and I didn't know anything about solar until I did. I didn't know anything about plumbing until I did. And I just got into it and figured it out. I've got great friends. I know lots of engineers and lots of people I can call to say, hey, what about this? And I just figured it out, made some mistakes, but that's part of the growth process.
Mhm. Right. Amazing. And so do you guys in your crew, do you guys have like monthly or bi-monthly meetings or gatherings, or how do you guys maintain, or do you maintain any type of consistent community events?
Yeah. So lots of things. So the first thing is we have a community newsletter that goes out, and
Mhm.
everyone contributes to it. And it's one way that we can keep everybody engaged with what's going on, what's coming up, those kind of things. We do lots of community events, and I'll explain some of them to you. We just got done doing what we call the Freeman Festivus. And the Freeman Festivus is the Festivus for the rest of us, right? So it's a holiday that goes on typically between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's a way to take pressure off of the holidays and be able to have a holiday that we create our own traditions at. And so we just
Nice.
got done doing that. We do what's called a homestead rotation. We just got done building a guy a house. So I got a buddy moved here from Indiana, bought a piece of land, decided they were going to build their own house. Once the basement was poured, all the material was there. 45 of us showed up, and in 2 days, built him a house. And didn't cost him a thing, Well, I guess that's not fair because he paid for the material and he also bought pizza. But other than that, it didn't cost him anything. I actually have videos on building that house on my channel. And so my house, we did a firewood day last year where about 45 people came over and we put up 13 and a half cords of wood in an afternoon. So we do lots of hands-on stuff. We don't do a lot of sit-down meetings. We do some, but it's way more about action. And how do we help this homestead get 0.001% freer? How do we get, that's how we do it. Now the conversations, the meetings we do have are more wrapped around what's coming next for the community. Because I'll tell you what I mean by this. So
Yeah.
every homestead, we encourage to put up a community building on their property. It's not community owned. They will own it. So like I have a community building being built right now on my property that will be a great place to have potlucks and classes and Sunday school or whatever it is, whatever it is you want to do there. There's another property 4 miles from me that they want to build the library. And so we'll all donate a ton of, self-sufficiency, these types related books. They'll have the library and you can go to the library and get a book on plumbing if that's what you're looking to do. And so we'll have many community buildings, but none of them are communal property. I think it's super important to stress this. So like the building on my property, it belongs to me, period.
Right. And what you're doing is being in a voluntary agreement
Correct.
with your crew and
Yep.
saying, hey, this will be a community place, and whatever agreements, in terms of hours or, access, that's up to you. But as a community member, just like you're helping the guy load the corn feed on his truck, you're giving this or providing this
Yes.
out of your own goodwill. And,
Yes.
and that's actually how you build community.
Yes. I actually am hoping that this building that's going up is the first step to our own education system, because we've got a couple teachers who have left the modern teaching system and have now moved out here, and they've shown a lot of interest. And we're going to start with just a Saturday class for the kids, and we'll probably start with the Bill of Rights and some of those basic things, and just to try to get kids to be free thinkers. But hopefully, we'll grow into a full-time homeschooling co-op. As time goes down the road. And, it's funny, I get this question a lot about, rules, and people say, hey, Tag, what are the rules, right? What does it cost to buy in? This is not a dictatorship. It costs nothing to buy in. And there's one rule: don't be a dick. That's all you got to do. If you can live to that, we will have no problems. If you want to use my community building, use it. That's what it's for. It's fine. Clean up after yourself. Fine. It's just not complicated.
And this goes back to the beginning of personal responsibility and
Yeah.
manners. Manners is a big one.
Yeah. I'm lucky we have a lot of leaders, and I don't have to worry about those kind of things. I have no issues there at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think a lot of people coming from the city and maybe difficult homes where it's like just trying to put food on the table, you don't have time to sit down and honor one another for existing and being here and seeing the good qualities in one another and acknowledging, oh, this is your strength in this area and I appreciate you, and just to have that agape love type relationship.
Yep. Yeah, we've got a family moving out here. They've already bought land, but they're moving from Phoenix, Arizona. And I love them. They are just this great people, but it's so fun for me to watch them transition from high-speed Phoenix, Arizona life to where we live. Because where we live, when you drive down the road, everybody waves at you. If you want to get something to drink, you better get it before 5 because the chances of you getting it after 5 are not good. And, stuff like that. And so, but just watching them go through how the banks work, because they work different here. They're slower. They're not in a hurry to get anything accomplished. It's not like in the city where it's demand, 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 demand. And it's been really fun for me to watch them learn the slower life that exists in the country.
What is the rough population of where you're located or nearby where you're located right now?
Yeah, so the closest town to me has 2,000 people in it. It's about 8 miles from me. But the closest big city, like if I had to go to Home Depot, for example, is 40 minutes from me, and it's got a population of 140,000.
That's not bad.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
40 minutes, I can have anything I need.
Okay, so I was speaking to Jim Gale, and he said the only thing he's connected is by the internet. So let me ask you, what is your internet situation there on your land?
Yeah, so I have internet perfectly fine. Obviously, I'm talking to you on it. I use a radio internet because I have direct line of sight to that town that I was telling you that's 8 miles away, so I get great internet. But there's a lot of people out here who use Musk's, internet. I don't remember what they call it.
Starlink, I think.
Whatever it is, but Musk's internet. A lot of them use that. We don't have any problem with internet. I mean, I stream all the time. We do a live every Friday night on my channel at 7 p.m. and I never have a problem, ever.
Nice. So you'd have just a local provider, or no problem.
No, I'm good cell phone service, good everything.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So the events you mentioned, Freeman Festivus, that's really cool. How often are your events? Are they quarterly events, or once a year, or every 6 months, or how do you do the events?
Yeah. So again, we talk like communities, all these different circles. So are the events, right? So we do 2 large festivals every year. Called the Midwest Preparedness Project. You can find it on Facebook. You can find it all over the place. Those are the 2 big events. Then we do the Freeman Festivus, which is the holiday. Those are our set every year events. They go on every single year. But beyond that, there are probably, 20 or 30 nights where we all get together and have dinner, right? For example. But always, every single week, I've got 2 homesteads right now I've got to get to. Someone needs my help with some electrical stuff, and another one I'm going to help him figure out how to cut stairs in his brand new basement. And so we're always at each other's house. Tomorrow night, I'll be at another one 10 minutes from me because he's retiring, and we're going to do a big retirement party for him. So planned events, we have 3 main ones, but the rest of it is all just, hey, we're going to, Mike's house today. We're going to put stairs in, or we're going to do this. Anybody that can make it. And we'll go do that, and we'll eat together and hang out and talk. And most of the time, our decisions are made with a hammer in our hand.
Right, that's the board meeting time. You're knocking in the boards.
Yeah, we're building something while we're talking, typically.
Nice. And so that's awesome. So like, this is very exciting because this is what real community is, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about like helping out each other, and there's not a formal exchange of cash or goods. It's just like, hey, we like that you're like-minded and freedom people, and helping the world and being a part of us, and we're going to help you. And there's kind of almost a psychic reciprocity expectation that you'll probably help someone else when they show up.
Oh yes, if you expect us to come help you, you better be here when it's called, right? I mean, this is what's so beautiful about it, is it fixes itself.
Yeah.
We have people in our community who never show up, and then they wonder why when they need help nobody shows up. It's easy. Super easy. People ask me all the time, well, how do we get into the inner circle? Be involved. That's it. I've let the cat out of the bag. That is the magic sauce. That's it.
Yeah. That's great. There's a great quote that says, seek not to become a man of success, but seek to become a man of value. Yeah. And that's what I've noticed when I go to these events, and how I get involved is you volunteer, you pick up the stuff, you actually say, hey, can I help? And you actually have a sincere desire to assist and serve and support versus expecting to be served. And these are completely different mindsets, I think.
Yeah. Well, I tell everybody who moves into this community, and one of the first statements I make to them is I always tell them, you have to be willing to do your part plus a little bit. If you're not willing to do your part plus a little bit, it's not going to work out. But if you're willing to do your part plus a little bit, you will find a flourishing community that benefits all of us.
That's right.
Just the way it is.
Yep, that's right. Many hands make light work.
Yes. Well, yeah, look at the guy we built the house for. I mean, Yes, he had to pay for the material, but he got a house.
That is big time, Tag. Let me tell you, man, that is
Yeah.
very impressive. I love hearing that. That just makes me feel so excited. I feel like the, rejuvenated of the human spirit. Like,
Yeah.
this is us. This is us. Like, we are this. This is what we are doing. We are figuring this stuff out, and we just have to, I think I got to come check out your Festivus or your, your events, because it's like, I got to bring that back to California, and
Yeah.
let other people, they don't know what they can't see. And then
Yes.
once they see it, they're like, oh, that's how it exists. So again, people can check out your YouTube channel. You mentioned the newsletter, and I think this is really important too.
Yeah.
Um, when I studied Gandhi, he said every community has a newsletter or a newspaper or a periodical or something like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you formulated it and how it's organized now?
Yeah. So we had last year, we had a lady move into our community, her and her daughter and her son-in-law, and they bought a farm maybe 15 minutes from me. And they came in, and she was a high school English teacher. And I'm a big believer in there's a butt for every seat, and that everybody has value.
Yes.
And but part of the challenge is you got to have enough leadership to recognize there's a butt for every seat. So I
Yes.
just approached her and I said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had a newsletter? And she said, oh, I will do that. I could do that. I could totally do that. Tag, I could do that. I could do that. Tag, I could do that.
Mm.
And I said, let's do it. How do I help? And she goes, well, what do you want it to look like? I said, I don't have any idea. That's your decision. How can I help? And I just put the ownership on her. Now she's the editor, the director, all of that. We have homesteads and preppers and the people around us who are sending in articles. And, so the way it looks, it's different every single episode that comes out. I quite often write articles for it in reference to law, to reference to, what are your water rights? What are your mineral rights? How do you find these kind of things? But there's also resources in there. If you want a well dug, who do you call? Here's the 3 well companies. We've had these experiences. There's also recipes. There's also, interviews with other homesteads. What are they working on? So it's just a big mass of stuff that's going on. And I really would like to get it to where it's more regular than it is now, because right now it's quarterly. But you've got to have enough people willing to send stuff in. And, there's a whole management process that goes into all of that. But that newsletter is broadcasted to 370 people every single time. And it's been a huge success. People really enjoy reading it. I do.
And those 300 people are within how many miles within, I don't know, the core, or I don't even know how you
Yeah,
describe it.
I would say 350 of them are within, 60 or 70 miles.
Nice.
But there's some that I know, like I mentioned that couple who was moving here from Arizona, they get it even though they're still living in Phoenix because they asked to be included in it, right? Because they're coming this way. So there's some on the edges, but most of them will live right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, quarterly sufficient, and maybe as you guys get bigger and want to, you could do it monthly or even weekly. I mean, because as things happen, right, there's more events. Have you heard of the Free State Project in New Hampshire?
Yes. Yes.
Any thoughts on that?
You know what? I am not educated enough on it to say that it's good or bad, but I would absolutely welcome a conversation with someone who could talk in depth about it. I've read what they say publicly.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
they have an annual event called Pork Fest, and I've gone once, like 2,000 people there at some camping grounds. They're really awesome, good freedom speakers. And it was, I think, an initiative 25 years ago where people got together and said, hey, we're going to move to one state and bring all the freedom people and, kind of like, let's flip a state for freedom. And I had this idea. I was like, a state's a little bit big, in my opinion. I appreciate what they're doing. I was like, I wonder if people could do it at a county level and do like the free county project where
Yes.
then everybody goes to accounting
Yes.
and then, take over, just, bring in all the people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you said about taking over a city or a county.
Yes.
What are your thoughts or vision that you want to maybe put out there for people to also get on board and be inspired by?
Yeah, well, I think let's start with the word takeover, okay? Because
Thank you.
okay, I really think it's just really, really important.
Yep.
I am a 100% believer in the fact we have the right to defend ourselves, but I am also a 100% believer in if your freedoms are not being threatened, their violence is never the answer. So just like say that blunt and to the front. So when I say take over, really what I mean is get elected. What I mean is let's get in and make sure that we have a couple members on the school boards. Let's make sure that the county commission, that we have representation there. Let's make sure that the planning committees and the city councils, that we have representation, because if we do that, our voices get heard. And then as we get bigger, this is where the takeover becomes. Where I live, 3 county commissioners decide a lot. If I could have 2 of the 3, which I have the second one running in this next election, if I could get 2 of 3, now we have majority, and we can really begin to implement the rules more based upon liberty and personal freedoms. And we can do those kinds of things. So it's not about doing anything underhanded. It's about applying the rules or the laws or whatever is in our area in the most liberty favored fashion that I can possibly do it. And I know ultimately that's not the answer, because I don't think there's a political solution to our problems. However, I will tell you, in the short term, we have a school district here that refused to mandate the masks for their kids, and the feds came in and threatened to take away their funding, and they held their ground, and the feds backed down. That only happens if you have those freedom-minded, liberty-thinking people in those positions. If all we do is go within and build our own school, well, that's great. Our kids are squared away, but what about everybody else's kids? Mm-hmm. How do we continue to reach, and how do we continue to get out there? And as long as I can use the system to spread freedom and to spread liberty, I'm absolutely going to do it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. As I study freedom and look into the solutions, I actually read the Declaration of Independence, and people who, if you haven't, I recommend you take a look at it. Absolutely. But it says, the just powers are derived from the consent of the governed. So, and we have unalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and then property that come from Creator or God. Right. So these are the fundamentals that, of course, we weren't really taught in public schools, right. Because once we realize that, we can do, I believe, what the colonists did to King George, which was write a letter and declare we're free. We don't have to pay your stamp tax. We don't got to do all the tea tax. We're declaring we're free, and leave us alone. And if you don't, there's going to be trouble. So I don't know. I mean, this is, I think, one of the great things about the community, because when you have people like-minded near you, there's a certain level of peace that I would feel, because I've been in like I said, in the super lefty statist places where I was surrounded by neighbors. These were all during the pandemic. And we went around, because we moved to a new neighborhood, and we went around to go meet the neighbors. And like one of them kicked us off his porch because we weren't wearing a mask. And we're kind of shunned. I'm like, we got to get out of here, man. I don't feel safe at all. So you want to share about the peace of mind, or the knowing that you're not surrounded by statists that are going to call people for when you're building a water catchment thing without permission, or fixing your roof without a permit.
Yeah. Well, I'm sovereign in my own right, and so I don't have to ask permission, and nor will I. But I think there's a lot of things that come from it, but one, it really helps with courage.
Yes.
Right, and the ability to stand up, because there's so many of us that can take a stand up. But I think there's a bigger part of all of this, which is, I tell people this all the time in my speeches where I talk, is, guys, we don't have to fight anybody. Yep. All we have to do is ignore them. Yep. And what the community allows me to do is it gives me the empowerment to do exactly that. We talked about building the guy's house. He didn't have to go get in the system. He didn't have to go hire anybody. He didn't have to go do any of that. We just ignored him. Yep. That's all we did. They don't even exist. If I need help, I have resources. We had my farm caught on fire last year. And we didn't call the fire department. You know why I didn't call the fire department? Wow. Because I can call my community members, and they're here 100 times quicker.
Wow.
My neighbor was burning a field, which is normal out here. Very often they'll burn the fields off. Mm-hmm. And it got just a little bit out of control, got onto my land. I called some community members. They all came a-running, and you know what? We put the fire out. That was the end of it.
Do you have a portable tank in someone's truck, or how did you?
I mean, if you're going to prepare for anything, start with fire and lightning. I mean, that's the single most likely thing that's going to come down the pipe. So our UTVs are all equipped with tanks and sprayers in case there's a fire. And so all of us. And so, when that happened, I fired up the UTVs, which had water in them, and I drove over to the fire, and we began to put them out. And the neighbor came over with his, and he began to put them out. And then the people who didn't have those kinds of equipment came over with rakes and shovels to come behind us to make sure that it was put out. It was fine. It took us about an hour and a half or 2 hours to get it completely out, but it was fine. I don't need to ask for their help.
That's right. And and then it doesn't cost them money, so they can't say you got to pay taxes or do all these things.
Nope.
So how did you get the message out? Did you call, like, you have a text thread or
Oh yeah.
some way?
Oh yeah. So we have many text threads, but there's one in particular that has all of the crew numbers in it that we can do. But I also have another one that has everybody in 5 miles.
Mhm.
And so I use the 5 mile text because those are the people who are closest to me who could respond the quickest. And by the time that message went out to the time the first person showed up was 4 or 5 minutes. And then we were off and running. And then the neighbor, who's not part of our community, who started the fire, was so thankful. We built such a huge bond of friendship because not only did we help get the fire out, I didn't charge him for anything that got burned up. It burned a stack of plywood I had, and it burned a rubber tire off of a tiller or whatever. It's fine. We'll worry about it later, bud. Just remember that next time I catch your place on fire. Deal?
That's
And
right.
he laughed and said, "Deal." And that's
right.
it.
So what you just did is you relieve stress and burden from your neighbor, who's not necessarily a freedom-minded guy,
Yep.
but by being an honorable man and having strong leadership and communication, you demonstrated that these are good guys. Like, I want to be a part of this community now.
Yeah. And now him and I talk every once in a while and wave, when we go by. And it's actually funny, the fire burned about 30 of my wife's small cedar trees that she had planted. And I told him, don't worry about this stuff, blah, 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 blah. And, a couple days later went by and I look out there and there he is with his shovel planting new cedar trees. I didn't even ask him to do it. He came up and replaced the whole line of cedar trees.
Wow.
That's all it has to be, right? Don't be a dick. It's simple. Be honorable. It's just not complicated.
That's right. Yeah, we're going back to basics because we've been convoluted in all these things, and the mainstream's confused about genders, and you're like, you guys are so far out there in outer space, man. Like, you guys are like, go out there by yourself. We're gonna be back here on Earth by the lakes and the waters and trees. You mentioned in the other speech too, you have a food forest. You want to talk about your garden, food, permaculture, or whatever you have on site there?
Yeah, sure. So we this is actually probably the place that we have strived to grow the most. When I mean grow, I mean personally grow.
Yep.
The most. So we have a big garden. My wife has two of them that are side by side, and this would be your traditional garden that grows your traditional things. But then she's also put in many swells where we grow, the fruit trees and the comfrey and, all of those companion plants that grow up into the food forest. And we try to add more every single year. Last year I added maybe 800 or 900 feet of food forest last year, and this next year we'll continue to do the same thing. So I basically have two types of gardens. I have the food forest idea that it continues to come back every single year and grows and multiplies, and
perennials.
One plant benefits the other. Then we have the traditional one where we're growing more traditional tomatoes and potatoes and those kinds of things because
annuals.
Annuals, right? So we have a big annual garden, and then we have the perennial gardens.
Yeah, beautiful. And automatic watering, drip systems. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I don't on the gardens, and this is the reason why. My wife is a super green thumb, but she has over the years grown her own seed year after year. A lot of the plants we grow is for seed. This is why the Buffalo Seed Company hires us to grow their seeds. And so her seeds are bioregionally adapted to our area. Last year, she had to water her garden twice. That's it. So the way she does it, she mounds up a big mound of dirt, and then she plants, and she covers it with lots of mulch, because I have a deal with the tree trimming companies that all the extra mulch gets dumped on my land. And so, and she grows them, so we don't really have to water them very much. But I do have automatic waterers for all the animals and all that stuff that's off grid because they consume it way more. But the gardens just don't need that much.
Wow. So you have the mulch over the soil, and that keeps the moisture in the soil or circulating there?
And it also soaks it up when it rains, right? So think of it kind of as its own water storage system, right? And it also creates a weedless garden, because the mulch is a foot thick. And so all you got is the plant sticking out. And if we can take now we're getting into energy management, which is the core to what I believe in. But if you can get rid of the energy that you have to use to weed, that's more energy used to harvest and to produce. And so we spend a lot of time and a lot of energy trying to simplify our processes so that just one of us can manage the entire homestead. We do this on purpose. One of us may get sick one day. But I also want to make sure that I have time to sit on the couch with my snow bunny and enjoy my life, right? I don't want to live a life where I'm just, oh my God, it's constant, constant, constant. So we try to challenge the systems. I talked about animal waterers. The waterers do it all for themselves. We don't have to do anything but check on them and make sure nobody broke anything, along. But other than that, it just kind of does it for itself. My house is a lot like that. It's very low maintenance, kind of takes care of itself. But energy management, big deal.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point because nobody wants to be working 18-hour days for, 40 years. It's like, how can we work a few hours a day and then enjoy our life? I think this is the balance of where we're going towards. And like, we want to enjoy this existence, while we're here. Hey, we ain't going to be around forever. So let's enjoy it while we can. And having these types of systems, I think are really helpful. And even just hearing your story that you're doing it, I think some of the audience members probably want to go to your Festivus or your next prepared. What month is the prepared?
The Midwest Preparedness Project. So the Midwest Preparedness Project will go the end of April, beginning of May, and then we'll go again the end of September, early October every year. And we just did the 21st one.
Wow.
So it's been going on a while. It's a great event, and it's all the locals, and it's a big camp. Most people just camp out there, and there's speakers, and it's also 100% free, by the way. There's no charge to come in, nothing like that. And we just have a good time and hang out. But it goes on twice a year. So
have you been out there for 20 years?
So no. So we do them twice a year, right? We just celebrated the 21st one, but it was started 13 or 14 years ago. And so, I've been out doing it since that time. But my journey kind of started the other way. I was a soldier, and once I came back from overseas, after witnessing, those kinds of things, I decided that I needed to be better prepared. And what started for me was just a little extra food put away, a little extra money put away. I one day realized that all of that's going to eventually lead to homesteading, and that eventually all homesteading is going to lead to freesteading, which is why we call it freesteading, by the way. But that's the natural progression of it, is going from off-grid to off-matrix. And it's just been my progression as I've gone through it.
Well, let's talk about that freesteading. So I actually joined this thing. I don't know. It must have been last year during this parallel event with Kia Silverino in Georgia. Yeah. And I think I look because whenever I see events, I always look at the speakers and see who can I learn from and who's doing cool stuff.
I didn't know you were on there.
I think so. I think I have an account and I think I put some homeschooling stuff on because it's the children, right? It's like, if somebody would have had this conversation with me when I was 10 and talk about some of the things we're talking about now, and over there with Jim Gale and Acapulco and all these places and the Greater Reset with Derek Rose, like, I was ready for these kind of conversations, but the culture and the society was like this, and play sports and do homework and do that for 10 years. It's like, I knew something was going wrong. I just didn't know it was designed to do that. So talk about freesteading, and where did you get this idea? Or why don't you tell people what freesteading is, and according to your website, and then we can talk about where it came from.
So freesteading is a social media platform. So it works a lot like Facebook. It's got forums, and it's got, activity feeds. It's got all of that stuff. There's groups in there, everything from the school to the church to the kitchen to, all these different topics. You can go in there and talk. You can direct message people. It's 100% free. There's no charge to do it. And we built it, me and a couple of my buddies of mine. I have a friend of mine who's been a lifelong friend who spent 16 years in psychological operations in the military before retiring. And he is the most interesting online marketer guy I know. I've employed him in a lot of companies, and he's just super, super good at it. But anyway, him and I sat down and said, what's the next evolution of our community? And how do we start to build these communities everywhere? Let's build a social media platform that yet lets people yoke up, right? And so we built it and put state pages in, and there's states like Tennessee that, I bet you they have 500 or 600 people in them now. And every state's represented, and really the goal was just give people an avenue where they can find other people. And so we built it, and we eat the cost of it every single month because there's no fee, and obviously nothing's free, right? Someone's paying for it. But and just because it's just kind of our way of helping to build, but it's been really successful in that I have met a lot of other groups through it, a lot of other communities who are at different phases. It's interesting. I didn't know that we were probably the furthest along of all the communities. I didn't know this. I thought we were just doing what we were doing. And now that I've been asked to speak so many places over the last 3 or 4 years and been out to realize this, so I get a lot of conversations about, tell me how to do this. How do you, I'm brand new into the county. I can't find anybody. What are the 10, 3 tips you would give me or whatever?
Yeah.
And those kind of things. And so yeah, it's just what it is. It's a social media platform that is free and it's designed to help people find community.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you for your service. That's amazing that you provide that for the people. Do you distinguish between homesteading and freesteading? What's the distinction, if there is any?
Oh, there's a huge distinction. So I believe, and this basically comes out of my own journey, but I believe that all preparedness, and I really hate the word prepper. I don't even like the word. But I think all preparedness, which I think, why do we have a 401k? Well, we do that to prepare for retirement, right? Why do we have homeowners insurance? Well, we do that to prepare for catastrophe. Preparedness is a big word. But I think ultimately all preparedness leads to homesteading. And I think it's that because eventually you come to this point where you can only store so much.
Yeah.
You can only do so much before you start figuring out you got to do for yourself. But then I think as you get into homesteading, there comes another point where you really start to try to exit the system. You try to get out of all of the avenues of attack. And, the average person is attacked on thousands of fronts every single day, right? Whether it's their mortgage or their car insurance or whatever it is. And as we work to try to break the stroke that the system or the power or the persuasion that the system has over us, you're getting into more of an off matrix situation. And so I think all homesteading eventually leads to freesteading, which is why we named it freesteading.
Mm-hmm. So homesteading is kind of like some independence from the matrix, but then freesteading is totally free from water, electricity, anything that the centralized system would make us be dependent on for.
Yeah, I would say homesteading would be growing your own food, right? Providing for yourself mostly in those avenues. Maybe even it would include water and some of those things. When freesteading to me is really more about, I don't need them anymore. I don't need their services. I just don't need any of it. I pay for internet, right? I'm still in the system. I'm paying for internet, talking to you now. I have a cell phone, but those are electives, bud. Beyond that, I have no car payments, no mortgage, no water bill, no sewer bill. I have no, we grow most of our own food. We even grow some of our animal food. So I think it's just the next evolution.
Yeah. What's your take on communication outages? Perhaps, let's say they wanted to take the communication things down, like the cell phone towers, or
Yep.
I mean, assuming that the worst of the worst happens.
Yep.
I hear Klaus Schwab, and I even heard Tony Robbins, and I want to say Ray Dalio, some kind of like high level dudes talk about cyber attack, and
Yep.
like as far as I know, we've never had a cyber attack, but as soon as they start saying it, it's like, they got something planned that they're going to do on us.
Oh, but there's the largest cyber war ever being waged right now. It's being waged right now, and I know this. And so there's a lot of ways to communicate. Now, obviously, cell phone is very convenient and easy, and we use it all the time. But there's other things. If you look back over my shoulder back here, that black screen you can only see half of, that's part of my ham radio setup.
Yeah.
So the radios and all that stuff are over there. But we also have, shorter scale CB and some of those kind of things that we can do locally here. But here's the good news. That's another advantage to having community. I'm not very far from anybody. The truth is there's several of my community members I could walk to their house if I needed something. Yeah. So we do have some communication things there. But the truth is I don't think any of them are free from vulnerabilities. I'm actually really looking forward to, from a newsletter perspective, I want to go to total paper copies where it's never emailed again. Because right now it goes out email. I'd want to go through the snail mail where we're literally mailing them out, which I would love to do. But the problem is that takes postage and, there's logistics, there's a whole other side of that, that goes into that. But so from communications, I would say, make sure that your, area of operations 1, right? Your AO0, your direct area, that you've got ways and people that can help you that doesn't require a cell phone or an email or those things. Because there's none of these systems that are not vulnerable. None of them.
Yeah, that's true. I remember in Hong Kong, this was, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, right before the pandemic, Hong Kong was going off protesting, and they were using mesh networks using...
Sorry.
Hong Kong was using mesh networks with Bluetooth, and I don't know all the details, but they were basically networking each other with Bluetooth and no internet and no grid, and it was a very intricate way to communicate. So ham radio is something that I'm interested in learning, and it seems like it's a smart way or a smart thing to learn.
Yeah, Bluetooth works okay, but just in very short distances.
Yeah.
You're not really going to reach out. Now, we've had some conversations about creating our own internet.
Hmm.
And I don't mean literally the internet. I'm talking about our own
Intranet.
intranet just
Yeah.
inside of the community. There's some other things we could run, wires across properties pretty easy and create, use some
Right.
military TA-312s or, whatever it is. But,
Yeah.
um, at the end of the day, again, everything has its vulnerability and you just have to kind of, learn to deal with it. But here's the thing about all of these communication systems. And I promise you this is true. And somebody don't believe me, don't matter. Go research it for yourself. All of them can be shut down with an email. 100% of them. Our grid can come down with an email. The cell phone towers can come down with an email. They all can come down with nothing more than a simple email.
With some malware in it or something.
Yeah, because there's kill switches and all kinds of things, right? There's back doors and
Yeah.
the evil, because I believe there's evil out there. The
Yeah.
evil that's out there, if given the right controls, I'm telling you, they can shut the grid down. They don't have to nuke us, EMP us. They don't have to do any of those kind of things, but they can just simply just shut it down.
Yeah, and in my research, because I everything's on the table at this point.
Yep.
I am optimistic about the future. I just think that these criminals and psychopaths, they think they can somehow wiggle their way out of it. But we know their names, we know their secret societies, we know their plans, and now we understand that they're not just coming after other people; they're coming after us and our children and grandchildren. And we're starting to take it very serious and very personal. So I think they're toast, but they don't want to give up power, as all tyrants and psychos do. So everything's on the table, and I think EMP or the malware thing. I didn't know that, but I did see, who was it? Edward Snowden, when he blew the whistle and said there's all these back doors in like the financial things, and of course they don't want to lose control. What's your take on the blockchain or crypto or Bitcoin? Anything?
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting topic, and probably the one that I've taken the most heat over is my stance on these, because I come from the financial world. Okay, so I come from the financial world. I understand it fairly well, but I don't see any way that the people in power give up the power of the purse.
Yeah,
they will not do it. They're going to hold till there's nothing left to hold on to, and so they're going to allow these cryptocurrencies, and they're going to allow these kinds of things to go on until they're a threat. And I think once they become a threat, they'll shut them down. And I would even go so far to say that, Bitcoin and some of them, they very well may be nothing more than, a planting of the seed for the digital currency that's sure to come. And I don't know that to be true, right? I'm just suggesting that I believe the digital currency is on its way, and I could give you all kinds of examples of why I believe that. But I think maybe a lot of this was just to get us accustomed to it, so that when they pull the trigger for the one world currency or the digital currency or whatever they want to call it, in reference to, the ESG and, the social governance and, all those things that are coming down the pipe, that this was just a setup to get us accustomed to using it.
Sure, to get us acclimated to, digital currency. I think that's very possible. They call it the CBDC, the central banking digital currency. And I think the problem is it's centralized. And of course, Bitcoin is decentralized, but there might be some evidence that those types of white papers came from maybe CIA or FBI or something, because like you said, they're going to do everything they can to not lose the power of the purse. Because look at the Federal Reserve banking system, and some of the research I'm finding is that the Titanic might have been a false flag to kill some of the obstacles or people that were going to stop the Federal Reserve banking system. So they know that the money is the most powerful thing. And what did was it Mayer Rothschild? He said, "Give me the power to print money, a nation's currency, and I care not who makes the laws." Because you get to buy all these politicians, right? These politicians have no moral standards or principles to stand on. They just pay me. Okay, I vote your way.
Well, I think the digital currency is a model like Bitcoin, a decentralized currency like that is a fabulous idea, but I only think it works post them losing control. Because until then, I mean, they've killed people for less, right? I mean, I just don't see any way they let it really get big enough to threaten them, because they're going to do everything in their power to maintain control, as you mentioned earlier, as all psychos do. I'm going to turn this light on so you guys can see.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I met a guy named Simon Dixon at a Bitcoin conference, must have been 5 years ago, and he told me Bitcoin is the way forward because it can't be hacked. Because the idea of the blockchain is that there's no central point of failure. There's a copy of the ledger on every personal computer that it's on. So he was all in, and that was some years ago. And then I think Monero is a good privacy coin, and maybe Darrow, some other options out there that I'm looking into and studying because when if I sent you money, it would be a digital dollar. I would
Mhm.
send you through PayPal or a Cash App,
Right.
so it's already digital. Now it's
Right.
just a matter of when the fiat currency, the dollar, goes down and implodes, as all fiat currencies do.
Mhm.
Then what's going to happen? And I think this is a bridge of uncertainty from the banksters. They realize, oh, if people start bartering, let's say like you're doing, or we have some silver or
Mhm.
salt or whatever means of,
Right.
of barter, um, they lose all power and control because
Yeah.
they know that with the dollar they got us by the balls. But if it's something else, they're like, oh, we lost that
Yeah.
group. And they know they're going to lose probably our communities, but like the people in the urban areas, they're just going to probably get the CBDC or RFID chip installed or whatever
Yeah.
draconian plans they got. Like they
Yeah.
know they can get some people, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the idea of cryptocurrency, I think, is a wonderful idea. I just don't think it's real as long as they are in power. I just don't
Yeah.
think they'll ever allow it to be.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. If you like or dislike his comments, put in the comments below. Put your
Yeah.
feedback. What you think of Tag's thing, because
Yeah.
the idea is that to have real dialogue and real conversation with respect and honor. And this is what it's like to be in community. If you're neighbors with Tag or me and we have certain opinions, well, it's okay if we disagree. What you can't be, as what Tag says, don't be a dick. What I would say is don't threaten people and
Yeah.
don't use violence against people. I'm
Yeah.
glad you said that earlier, Tag, about violence being the last resort,
Yeah.
because when we use violence, especially against the state's an expert at violence. That's
Yeah.
what they're pros at.
Oh yeah.
But what Martin Luther King discovered, and Gandhi, was that nonviolence is actually more powerful than violence.
Yep.
And there's a great documentary called How to Start a Revolution by a guy named Gene Sharp, which he basically showed how nonviolent weapons is like ostracization, boycotting, these
Mhm.
types of things, commerce, as we are talking before. Um, so, is there a marketplace within your crew or mag, or talk about mag? I heard you give a acronym of it before on another talk. What does mag mean, and is there a marketplace in general, or is it kind of through the newsletter or just the gatherings that you guys do business together?
Yeah. So MAG is a I don't even know who came up with it, but it's an acronym that stands for Mutual Assistance Group.
Hmm.
And it's been used for years and years and years, which is why we use it. And really, what it is it's a whole bunch of crews that just come together. So, like when we do the festivals, there's 4 or 5 crews who have come from different parts of the country, and we sit down and chit chat. And actually, some of the leaders of those, we retire to a camper or whatever, and just have a conversation about how we can interlock them more and more and more and more and more. But anyway, to answer your question about
Yeah.
marketplace, so the good news is via the newsletter, it tells us in there who does what, right? So if someone is, I hate to use the chicken egg example, but
Yeah.
it's just something everyone will understand. Out here, everybody has chickens. Eggs have almost no value. Okay. Because everybody has them. I mean,
That's right.
I get so many. We feed our dogs eggs? We do everything we can do with them, and still can't get rid of them all. So, it's a bad example, but Grumpy Acres, for example, has they grow sheep. And so it'd be very easy if we wanted to get a sheep, there'd be someone I could go through. We've got people who raise guardian dogs that we could go through. We'll just go directly to them. There's no centralized barter town thing, except at the Midwest Preparedness Project. Saturday night, one of the events that goes on is what's called Barter Town, and everybody brings their wares. It is the most amazing event. You would never understand it until you experienced it. But it's table after table after table after table after table after table of everything from gas masks to comfrey to someone sewing stuff to something that they cutting boards that they built to They have kids that show up and put up their own tables of their stuff.
Love it.
Dude, it's the most amazing thing. And it's my favorite thing to go to. I very rarely barter. Most often I'm leaning against a tree, just absorbing the whole experience. I don't know if you know who Chuck Peoples is or not, but he runs Homestead Medical.
Okay.
But he came out to speak at the last Midwest Preparedness Project. And after it, he said, no words can explain this, quote.
Wow.
Because it was just that cool. But anyway, to answer your question, on an everyday, day-to-day life, we just go directly to each other. We're small enough still that I pretty much know who has what. You know, like I have a sawmill, for example. If somebody needs something milled, they can bring it over and we'll mill it up, you know, or whatever. But so it's just kind of a direct to direct.
And they would call you up or text you or say, hey, I need to get this thing milled, you know, how many sheep or what would you ask from me or something like that? And you'd be like, okay, yeah, give me a trade and we can do that.
Yeah, usually I'm like, I'll take 20% of the wood. Deal.
20% of the wood. What is, I don't get that one.
So if you bring me a gigantic tree that you want milled up because you want 4x4s out of it, I get 20% of the wood and I put it in my storage to continue to build on my projects.
Got it. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah,
right.
But I trade all kinds of things. But I've traded pigs for mechanics work. I've traded, I mean, just, it's amazing how it all works, you know, and it just depends.
And as long as you have a good relationship with the person, it's like, it's easy to do business, you know, check this, make an offer, make a counter offer back and forth and make sure it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. And this is something I think people miss a lot is they go into a deal. And I think this is the city mindset, but they go into the deal about, I'm going to get the best possible deal I can at whatever cost. When I do a deal, it is equally important to me that they're getting a good deal. And I'll even give some. There's so many times I've traded something that, you know what, really, I probably didn't get the best deal there, but it's fine. It goes to my community. It helps somebody out. I'm not even going to, that's what I mean. You got to do your part plus a little bit.
Right. That's adding the value and ensuring it's equal, or if anything, they get 51% of the deal. And I'm okay with that because 49 is still good, but you're like investing in the community. Yeah. You mentioned something earlier about law, and I have an interesting experience the last few years with law. I was arrested in a post office for not wearing a mask, and there was no charges dropped. I mean, there was no charges filed. So I thought I had a good federal case. I sued the federal government, and then the last couple months they dismissed it. I'm just like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe because I'm a pro se litigant, but how does law affect you and your attentional neighborhoods, or what has been your experience maybe suing the government or having them back off, or what significance does law play in your community?
Yeah, you know, this is actually something interesting that I'm learning and I'm growing on a lot, I think, every single day is I'm coming to the realization that if you challenge them, typically they'll back off. I did not know this, but I've gotten into, we have a plant that grows out here called Cerezo lespedeza, okay? And it's a noxious weed. And it was brought to us by the state because they wanted to control erosion. And so they bring this plant in, it turns into a noxious weed, it's everywhere. And now the county wants to send threatening letters out that says, if you don't eradicate your Cerezo lespedeza, which by the way, you can't eradicate. You can keep a head on it and you can mow it, you can do those things, but it's fierce. But if you don't do it, we're going to fine you $100 a day. And so, like in a case like that, I told the commissioners, which I know them all really, really well, but you know, I went in there and told them, no, sue me. You know what? They don't send me letters anymore.
Wow.
So I think you've got to be smart in that, right? You can't put them in a position to where they're going to lose face publicly. You can't put them in a position to where they're forced to react. But I think if you're smart at the way you go about it, a lot of that stuff isn't really a law. I mean, the fact of the matter, an executive order, for example, the executive branch can't make laws. The whole word executive order is a, you know, oxymoron. Yeah. And so these little regulations and rules that counties, they're unconstitutional anyway. And the fact is, if they know I'm willing to take them to court, they're pretty sure they're going to lose. Yeah. They'll back off of it. They just have gotten away with it for so many years. We've just said, yes, sir. Yes, king, we'll do what you say. That's right. No is a complete sentence. Exercise that. It's fine. So law, it's such an interesting thing. I mean, I pay my taxes. You know, I use my blinker when I turn a corner. I mean, I do those kinds of things, but I'm not real big on asking for permission for things. And, you know, the tax man who comes out, you know, from time to time will go, hey, where'd that building come from? Well, I built it. Did you get a permit? No. We know we're going to have to tax you on that. Do what you got to do. I'm not going to let it affect me. I'm not going to let it ruin my day or bother me or any of those kind of things. I'm just going to live my life free. I'm not asking permission, and that's just the end of the story.
Mm-hmm. So that's a property tax guy would come out and look at the building?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what they'll do is in where I live, they can't come onto your property if the gate's closed, and they're not allowed in the house. But what they can do is they can stand at the gate and they can look and then go, oh, you got a new building, or you got, whatever it is, which I love that at least here they can't come on your property. That's a good thing. But so, yeah, they want to make sure they're getting all the tax dollars they can because the systems are failing and the dollar's not worth what it was anymore. And so revenues, although they show that they're way up. So like, for example, in my county, tax revenues are up 12%. But what they don't tell you is gravel's up 75%.
Right.
Right. I mean, so they're getting their butts kicked right now. So they're trying to get all of the tax revenue they can get. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that these government offices, specifically like the county commissioners, don't do anything beyond the statutory duties assigned to them. For example, we pay taxes to have the cemeteries mowed. Well, the fact of the matter, that is not a statutory requirement of a county commissioner. They just somehow have decided that's in their role. Well, what we need to do is get them out of the roles they don't belong into and try to get them into the roles that they do belong into. And, we can find an old retired guy to mow the, cemeteries.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of bureaucracy, a lot of back scratching going on, a lot of nepotism going on. Of course, we all want to make money, but at the expense of forcing it out of people, extracting it out of people. I consider taxation to be robbery and unacceptable. And I'm learning about the ability to put everything, assets and everything into the church, because there's separation of church and state. So we'll have other shows on that. And Jackie Fig, I interviewed her about this. But let's talk about the noxious weed thing, because the noxious weed is like this minor thing, but it's like a thumbnail or a smaller picture of a bigger one, which is they say, you do this, you cut this grass over here, or we're going to fine you. Let's slow it down a little bit. So they sent you letters. It's $100 a day. And then you let it go on for however long you went on, let it go on for. And then you went into the county commissioner, or what? Let's break it down for people out there, because a lot of people, they get letters from the county commissioner and they're like, okay, we'll do it. And we're like, hey guys, no, your rights come from God or source. And it's no longer that time where you bow down like a slave. You are a sovereign one. You're a self-owner, and we need to begin acting like that. So what was that process when you got it? Like how long, how many letters, or how long did it go on for until you went in there and talked with somebody?
Yeah, so it went on for several years. And basically, I would just get one letter a year that would say they're going to do it, and they never did it. I just ignored them, threw it in the trash and went about my life. But then I was in the county commissioner's office because they were proposing a tax levy increase. And so I went in to fight or argue with them a little bit about it. And I told them, look, you guys aren't enforcing this. Why are you mailing this to me? I'm not going to do it. So if you got to take me to court, you know me, and I will absolutely get the lawyers on it, and we can just go to court and we can settle this. Or leave me alone. These are your two choices.
Got it.
And this is the advice I would give people. Go pick a fight that's insignificant. I know this is going to sound weird, because they're not willing to fight. And then once you get empowered because they're not willing to fight and you've learned it, it makes it much easier to continue that next step. A noxious weed on my property, they ain't going to fight it. They're not willing to go to court with me because I will sue their ass, and they know I will. So if we get 100 people to do that, and then 300 people to do that, and then 600 people to do that, they're going to have to make a choice pretty quick. Right? And so this is an insignificant issue. Isn't over a bunch of revenue. It isn't over, I refuse to put license plates on my car, or I refuse to have interest. None of those kinds of things. It's something very simple and very little that everybody can do. And then pretty quick, I think the commissioners or whoever's in charge, the city councils, whatever they are, they're going to get used to hearing the word no.
That's right. It's very difficult to work with somebody when they say no, come get me and I'm going to take you to court, because the system, they want easy prey. It's a predatory type system. And when they meet another apex predator, someone's going to fight back, metaphorically speaking, with paperwork and knowing who you are on the land. They're like, no, because they got to pay attorney fees and all that stuff. And that's all money down the drain that they don't have, or it increases like their insurance or their bond money. So it's a financial racket that we're starting to learn about.
But here's the thing: we get to play by the same rules. It's fun. If they ever take me to court, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to delay it 1,000,000 times. I'm going to bleed them dry. I'm going to make them spend all the money proving everything. I'm going to drag them through it. I don't even care how it comes out.
Yep.
I'm going to make it hurt.
That's right.
And
yep. Because that's a victory, because draining their money is a victory. They're trying to drain our money. We're draining their money. And so this is understanding the game that we're playing.
Yeah.
And standing up is probably, 90% of success. Whether, you come out on top or not, it's like they now know that Tag's going to stand up and fight. And as they learn about your community, they realize, oh, these guys are organized and they have resources or mindset or volunteers. Let's just leave them alone. Okay. Let's just let them be and not mess with them.
Well, and this is where the community comes in too, because they know that we swing a pretty big stick.
Yeah.
In my county, one of the last commissioners races, the guy was elected with 225 votes.
Total?
Total.
Wow.
So we can win pretty easy, right? I mean, that's not a monumental thing, but guys, this is, I want everyone to understand this. They won't fight you on the insignificant things. Do you know who Mark Baker is?
Sounds familiar, but I don't know.
He runs the Anyone Can Farm experience in Michigan, and he got in the USDA got in a fight with him for selling raw milk. And they tried to take his farm and all of these kind of things, but they didn't understand who they were dealing with. He hired an attorney and said, okay, we're going to court. And so after a couple years, now it was expensive for him, right? But after a couple years, the USDA come to realize they were going to lose this case in court. Okay. And so they started to back down. They disappear. They don't bother him anymore. Did you know he sends a monthly email to the USDA reminding them that Mark Baker is still selling raw milk?
Good for him.
Yeah, he trolls them. Okay. And this is the thing, guys. You can win a lot. You just have to have the courage to take a stand and say, you know what? No. What are you gonna do to me?
That's right. And I'm gonna look him up because there's got to be some videos on it or about his story. And this is what's happened is that for so many years, maybe 70, they've controlled the media. So we didn't know that there were champions out there like you and Mark Baker and Jim Gale and these guys that are winning. And it's like, oh, now these stories are rising through YouTube or Rumble or podcasting. And we're like, you mean we can win these guys? We can stand up and exercise. And again, to be, clear, it's not, we're not taking over. We're not doing anything. We're exercising our God-given rights.
That's right.
That we were deceived, that we didn't know we had because it was the king, the monarch, divine right, and then the politicians. And now we're like, we're all equal. Just leave us alone. The land belongs to the people. We seek peace and harmony amongst all people. Why are you guys using coercion amongst us? And I think that's going to be one of the key things for this new civilization that's being created, is to let those guys know, hey guys, we're building a moral, voluntary world over here, and there's space for you guys over here. But if you guys are going to use violence, we're going to ostracize you or, do other things peacefully, non-violent. But like, nobody wants coercive people in the community, and nobody wants a dick in the community, and you guys are being dicks.
Right. So it's so simple, isn't it? Just simple.
Exactly.
It's just so simple.
It is. And I think this is why we are inevitably going to win. And so you're doing really amazing stuff out there, Tag. I really got a lot of admiration and respect and appreciation for what you're doing. And thanks for taking some time. We're just wrapping up here. Anything else? We covered a lot, but I wanted to kind of learn more about you, and I'm gonna go check out some of your YouTube stuff, and I hope other people go take a look. The fact you built a house in 2 days, very exciting. And you mentioned, the solar stuff. Let's talk a little about energy, because independent food is important, independent water. We haven't touched on energy. You have a solar company. Why don't you share a little bit about solar ideas, solutions, or ways to think about it for newbies out there?
Yeah. So as I went through my journey, after I lost my career, one of the things I did is I did what I called a my life analysis. And that's where I really took a look at who I had to ask permission from. When you pay a mortgage, you're asking permission. When you're paying for your water, you're asking for permission. All of it's a permission game. And my goal at the time was to remove all that stroke and limit the number of fronts someone could come at me at, right? Because I wanted to go piss them off. And if I'm dependent upon them and then I piss them off, that's a bad road. So I wanted to go down that road. So solar energy independence, in my opinion, is I think probably the single big issue of our time in reference to those dependencies, because
Yeah.
the way they can cut it off, turn it on, the way we're so dependent, everything's
Oh yeah.
dependent on it. So I went out and built me a big system. I built it myself. It works great. Powers my house, my processing kitchen, my shop, powers everything we have out here, and it works good. But after I got it built, and I spent a lot of money doing it, I started to think to myself, you know what? There's got to be a cheaper way to do this.
Yeah.
You know, I spent a whole bunch of money, and so I sat down with one of my buddies and said, "Hey, could we create a solar system that was really more turnkey?" You know what I mean? It's all housed together. It's all pre-programmed at the factories. It's all, everything's done for us, where it's a pretty simple turnkey process. So I contacted lots of different people, and some of them wanted to play, some of them didn't want to play. And so we built a company called Grid Down. And if you go to griddown.com, you'll see many solar systems on there, and they're very turnkey, easy home use. They'll work with grid, without grid, with generator, without generator, with wind turbines, with solar panels, whatever it is. And the main reason I built it is so that in my community, I could get them solar systems wholesale, right? So that I could help us get energy independent here.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of took off, and now people buy them, and they're shipped all over the country now. But it really was built for not really much more reason other than, can I get my community off grid?
Mm-hmm. Nice. And what's the learning curve like for somebody to do that? Is it very difficult to learn, or was there a step-by-step process? No.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't understand solar, I'll give you a real quick definition of what a solar system is. Okay, your panels are nothing more than a charger. How fast do you want to charge your batteries? Or how well do you want to charge in low light conditions? The more panels you have, right? Because they're going to charge even the tiniest bit of light, you're going to get a charge out of them. Now it's going to be small, right? And so how fast do we want to get our batteries back up full? Or how well do I want to charge in the middle of a snowstorm or a rainstorm or whatever it is? And so you're going to size your solar panels based upon those needs. Okay. Your batteries are nothing more than, how long do you want to go without sun? The more batteries you have, the more power you have. For example, I can go 66 hours without any input before I have to have input to charge those batteries back up. But I know people who have 2 weeks worth of power, right? That they can go a long, long, long time. And so think of the batteries as really, it's nothing more than that. The inverters, which is another component into the solar system, really has nothing. The only thing that really matters is how much power do you want to have available to you, right? A 6,000 watt inverter, right? So I have 3 7,000 watt inverters, all linked together, pre-programmed, so that I can get that big power, because I weld with my system, right? I do everything. I mean, I need big power.
Nice.
Because I have a homestead. And so that's all it is. And it's really not any more complicated than that. The complicated part about solar, in my opinion, is when you have to try to get inverters talking to each other. And you have to start those kind of things, which is why we built Grid Down, because it all comes pre-commissioned. They do it at the factory, disassemble it, and then ship it out, so that it's all working the way it's supposed to work. The people at the factory actually call the client and say, what are you going to use it for? What is the purpose? So that they can program it all ahead of time. So when they get it turned on, it meets the needs. But at the end of the day, guys, I'm going to tell you, when I built this house, I built my own house. Me and my wife built our whole house, 5,000 square feet. I started with a few panels, 1 inverter, and 2 batteries, and that built my whole house. And then as time wore on, I began to add to it, and I added more panels, and I added more inverters, and I added more stuff. It's not an all or nothing equation. You don't have to go spend $75,000 to get off grid, right? You can, I'm trying to buy 2 batteries every year to eventually work myself up to maybe 120 hours without any input. It's just a process. Don't get caught up staring at the bark, right? You can't see the woods because you're stuck right here. It's not that complicated.
That's great.
You absolutely can do it.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown. Thank you for that. What would you say is the minimum for maybe, say, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, or a 3-bedroom, 2-bath? What would be the minimum specs that someone would look for or aim for?
Yeah, I think that rather than talking about a 2-bedroom apartment, the real question is, what are you going to run off of it? Because here's the thing, there's some things that take a lot of power. So I'll give you some example. Let's say you have an electric hot water heater. If that's the case, it really doesn't matter that you have a 2-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom house. That hot water heater takes a lot of power. Your air conditioner takes a lot of power.
Yeah.
Right? And so it really has more to do with what are you running. If someone just wants to run the TV, the internet, a couple lights, and a fan, oh man, we'll put in a simple 1,000 watt, 1,500 watt system. It'll do that all day long.
Okay.
versus the big 20,000 watt system, you know? So it
Hmm.
really has more to do with what you want to run off of it. If you go on
Hmm.
griddown.com, there are calculators in there that you can actually enter each individual item on there, and it will tell you what size of system you need. There's a
Beautiful.
battery calculator that you can say how long, you want to talk about how long you want to go without sun, just enter the data and it will tell you based upon your location, based upon those kinds of things. Because that's the other thing people have to understand. The sun I get here in Kansas is not the same sun you're going to get in California, which is also not the same sun they're going to get in New York. They're all
Mm.
different. The angle of the sun is different. How many hours of daylight you get is different. So I hate to tell
Yeah.
this, but the answer to the question is it depends.
Well, it's so interesting because with my gardening stuff, I'm realizing the sun's at different places throughout the year and different hours, and I'm like, oh, this affects my watering, or this affects what like where I plant certain crops,
You
and I'm
bet.
like, this is interesting because I would never have thought that that's important, but like
Oh, it's super important.
it's critical.
I'm going to
So
tell you a real quick
yeah,
story. I
go
have a
ahead.
buddy of mine who's a super high profile engineer. Him and I have been friends a long, long time. And there was a day when we were in the middle of building our house, and he walked into my living room and went, air conditioning. There wasn't any. So, okay, so this has to do with managing, and I tell people all this time, homesteading is nothing more than management. That's all it is.
Hmm.
If you're managing where the sun is coming up where it's coming up, and if you're managing where that energy is going, can it get past your soffits and your fascia and get into the windows? Well, you hope it does in the winter and you hope it doesn't in the summer. Well, that's easy. At what longitude or what angle and how big does that soffit need to be to block the summer sun but let the winter sun in? It's not complicated,
Yeah.
right? Just learning how to build these things. Thermal mass. My floors in my house are 2 foot thick concrete. And the reason they're 2 foot thick concrete is because they absorb that temperature from the ground and then they release it all day long. This is why my house was cool when it was 100 degrees outside but 75 in my house, because that temperature is being released up out of the ground. So if you just build smart,
Yeah.
you can eliminate so much of your needs for energy, which again shortens and shrinks the size of the solar system you need.
Mm. Well, one of the things you said that was so impressive, you built your house. So were you the architect too? Could you mention the water on each side of the house or the other side? I mean, I just think of like, man, you must have had a great blueprint or something,
Nope.
or what, how did that whole process work?
Yeah, so I built my house in pods. And the reason why I did that is because I didn't want to borrow money.
Yeah.
I own my home. And so the first pod I built had the kitchen, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms in it because I knew that if the lights went out or something happened, we'd make it just fine right there. So I built a 20 by 30 2-story pod one. In that pod is where I put the water in, I put, all of those kind of things in. By the time we got that almost done, me and my wife sat down and said, we'd really love to have a living room. So I built pod two. My house looks like a castle if you ever seen it. So there's lots of stuff going on. So the pod two, when we got that built, okay, we really like to have a spare bedroom, a laundry room, and another bathroom. Boom, pod three. And I'm actually sitting up on level 3 in pod three. We call this the crow's nest because there's windows all around me. I can see 100% of my property sitting right here. And
Awesome.
so right now I'm trying to finish pod four. Pod four is ultimately my master bedroom. And because right now we just stay in the spare bedrooms until I get it built. But I'm working, I got all the drywall in, I'm closing in on finishing it. So I knew kind of what I wanted in my head, but I built this place with no blueprint.
So just one pod at a time, whether it's, I don't know, 16 by 16 or something like this,
Yeah.
little by little.
Yep, just little by little. I knew in the end, I wanted all of these things. And so I made sure that I left the space, right? So if you build a tall sidewall, you can always add on. It's easy. You're cutting up underneath the soffit instead of cutting into the roof. And so I just made sure I left the water lines in that wall right there so that when I added the next pod, I could tie right into the water lines, right? And so it was just thinking ahead a little bit. But I have a video on my YouTube channel about how I built it in pods. And it shows that process. But yeah, me and my wife built it without a lot of building experience. My favorite favorite picture that I have is I have a picture of my wife 3 stories in the air putting the last rock on the fireplace that she put in 3 stories up. And it's like one of the proudest moments of this whole process is that she was up 3 stories in the air putting rock on a fireplace.
Absolutely. The small joys, which they're huge joys, right? Like
Yeah.
the small things, but they're big things that are
Oh, they're
like
big.
soul, heart,
Yep.
freedom, full freedom.
Yep.
Yeah, man, that's really cool what you're doing. How long did it take from start to where you are now, pod by pod? Few years?
Yeah, so I poured. I'm at 4.5 years right now,
Cool.
and about I pod 1, 2, and 3 are complete. Pod 4, which is Ultimate Master Bedroom, I'm 80% complete. But here's the thing: is that I've got work, and I'm running these companies, and I'm doing those things, and I get to work on it when I get to work on it. And but it's not just that; it's also the weather. So, for example, when
Mm.
springtime comes here, I'm out of my building projects. I'm putting gardens in. We're doing all of those things, and so that runs from about March, and then planting season's running all the way up to about June. I get about a month and a half break, and then we start harvest, and then harvest is going to end at about September, and then I can go back to building. So I haven't been in pod 4 in almost a year because
Mhm.
I save it for the winter. So when the winter time comes, I'm going to be inside, nice and toasty, working. Right,
Got it.
I'm
Yeah.
saving that work for that stuff. So
Got it. So it's like 2 or 3 months out of the year,
yeah,
or I don't know Kansas, but
yeah,
generally, some type
yep.
of
2 or 3 months
season.
a year, I'm inside building on my house. The rest of the time, I'm outside building fence or barns or working on my infrastructure, which is a huge thing to me. How do I deliver water economically everywhere? How do I make it automated? This is the thing, but we back in the 1800s, over 40% of the population participated in the Great Migration. They left the East Coast, headed for the West Coast because of political, social, whatever it was.
Yep.
We're participating in the Great Resignation, and I talk about this all the time. But this time, we get to use technology. I can
Yes.
have automated waterers. I can have all
Mm.
of these things that
Yep.
allow me to manage my energy capital, where I'm not working 18 hours a day.
That's correct. Yep. As kind of add on to that about technology, artificial intelligence. This has been something interesting the
Yeah,
last 6 months or 12 months, seeing
yeah,
Chat GPT grow up.
yeah,
And I'm like, how is this going to affect us? Because I study these people and they're like, this is going to be bigger than the internet. It's like,
yeah,
okay, what's going to happen? Well, the quote that really helped me was that you're not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by a human using AI.
yeah,
I
yeah,
said, okay. So then I found out that there's something called prompt engineering, which is learning how to prompt the AI is going to be like the skill that all these top companies and,
yeah,
our own companies, would want to
yeah,
master. And then because you have all this information and data, but if you don't know how to extract it through
mhm,
questions and commands, then what use is
yeah,
it? So to use that to find the automatic watering or
yeah,
the architecture or the solar, all these things, I
yeah,
think these opportunities exist for people out there to learn and realize you don't have to be super genius or have all this
yeah.
experience, but you got to have an open mind and maybe want to share about the importance of creative thinking and imagination and how that's been
Yeah.
helpful for you in your life.
Yeah, so I am a very creative person. That's why I can, visualize in my head and see my house when it's done. My wife, on the other hand, is not. I pretty much have to draw her a picture for everything because she just simply can't see it. And it's actually
Mm-hmm.
gone so far as to when I build the outside walls, I go in and mark with blue tape where the windows will be so she can walk around and make what changes she wants. So we're all wired a little bit differently. There's a butt for every seat. But I think not getting locked into this is the way it's supposed to be and just being willing to accept and to learn. And you were just talking about the internet, and for a long, long time, I believed it'd be the end of society.
Yep.
It would cause it, but and through this is me growing with my son. My son's 30 years old, right? And they're
Mm-hmm.
younger, and they're all of that. It might be the very thing that saves us. You talked about AI, and it may everyone's saying it might be the end of the world, but maybe it'll be the thing that saves us. So I think
Yep.
it's really more about having an open mind and be willing to research, be willing to say I don't know, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You don't got to be an expert and just look it up. You'll figure it out. But I've built businesses my whole life, and so I'm wired that way.
Yep.
No
Yep.
challenge is too big. I don't know any better. Like people ask me all the time, like, "How did you do that?" I don't know any better. I
Sure.
just don't.
Yeah. No one told me I couldn't, so I did
Right. No
it.
one said, I don't know. I think it's cool that someday my grandkids will say that's the house Grandpa built.
That is very cool. What was your childhood like?
Oh goodness. So I kind of come up rough. My mom and my dad were both very dysfunctional. My mom was a bad alcoholic, went to jail several times when I was growing up. My dad was just non-involved. He was kind of selfish to his own. So I spent a lot of time by myself and
Mm-hmm.
I was fully on my own at about 15 and lived on my own ever since. But I think that's part of what makes me who I am. I'm very
Yep.
self-driven. I'm those kind of things. Love my mom and dad to death, and I appreciate the gifts that they gave me. But yeah, I had kind of a weird childhood. Yeah.
Well, this is the blessing, which is they pushed you out in life early. And
Yep.
some of us were kind of playing around still and
Yeah.
living at home and taking it easy, but you had to deal with the realities of
Yeah.
this life at
Yeah.
15, as you
Yeah.
said. And it's like, oh, I better get my shit in gear because there's nobody here for me right now,
Yeah.
And
You know,
that's
it's funny.
that's a
That's why I joined the army, because I
yes,
was going broke trying to keep it up at 18 years old, and this gave me a way to make a living and someone who would feed me.
that's right. Just
Yeah.
give me a meal and a place to sleep,
Right.
right?
Right.
Basics. How long were you in the military for?
4 years.
Nice.
Yep. Did 4 years. Then I got out and started into business and learned a whole bunch of mistakes and eventually ended up running a whole bunch of big ones.
Yeah. So did you have a mentor when you came out, or how did you go from the bottom to the top with no experience prior?
I didn't know any better.
Yeah,
Like
just
I always
hungry,
say
just
that.
getting after it,
It
just
just,
getting after it.
I was not the most talented, but I outworked everybody. And
Yeah.
I think that helped out a lot. I had some good mentors along the way, but I was good at what I did. And, it was so funny, when I started, I was a sales guy knocking on a door. And, 23 years later, I'm running them. And, well, till COVID. And then I lost my career. But what's funny, even in that, I look back at it, it was the single best thing that ever happened to me. I lost my dad to COVID, and I can still say that. Because at the end of the day, it woke me up. It smacked me upside the head, and it's affected so many people now. That one little act of, okay, you don't want to mandate it, you're fired, has now turned into the community and has turned into me speaking all over the country and has turned into all of these things.
So that's what happened when you lost your career, is that the upper management or somebody was saying you must mandate this, or the board or something. Who was telling you got to
Yeah.
mandate the jab in the
Yeah.
company?
So the CEO of the company, so basically, I ran two holding companies, two insurance companies, a marketing company, and an investment company. We had about 900 people on the payroll in 32 states. And the CEO came to me one day, and so I answered only to him. And so I was in charge of all money in. And then from there, it went to the chief operating officer who managed it once it hit the door. So I was in charge of all money in. And he came to me and said, "Hey, how do you feel about mandating the vaccine?" And I said, "I'm not with this at all. We have no ownership over the employees' bodies. Furthermore, it's going to put us at risk at lawsuits going down the road. I'm not supportive." A
Yep.
week later, he sent me an email and said, "We're going to mandate it. And I think it's best served if you do it." And so I, soul searched just a little bit and put a meeting together. And I got on stage and said we weren't going to mandate it. They escorted me off, and I lost my career.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I have videos about it if you watch them, but uh,
Yeah. Well, this is
I
what's
never
going to
knew it was
take.
going to turn into this. I did
Yeah.
not know. But
Well, you have a line in the sand, and I think this is the proper line. Injecting untested drugs into our
yep,
blood system is unacceptable. And this whole vaccine agenda, I've seen the last 7 or 8 years. I said this is their playbook. This is what they're going to
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Inject this toxins, and who knows? I found out the head of Pfizer, Burla, is he got his PhD for animal infertility, something like that. So,
really,
yep, yep. I hope that's incorrect, but that's what I found in some brief research, is that he did animal sterilization type research, and so now he's doing what. So these predators are absolutely out of their mind, and apparently have a hate for humanity, despite they're part of the human family.
yeah,
And we would welcome them all back if they would turn from their ways and realize, like, we're all in the same boat here, guys. I don't know what you guys are doing trying to sterilize people, or at least cause death and maim and harm. So
yeah,
everybody has to choose that line in the sand, brothers and sisters, and that's what this is about. This is finding your line. I would say coercion is mine, the forced jab is mine, the RFID chip, I'm not going to get any of that. So
yeah,
choose your solution, choose your path, which is find your tribe, consider
yes,
joining tag in Kansas, or listen to some of the other speeches and things that he's done, and see how you can build it in your own community, because we do need more leaders. And you are qualified. I love you said there's a butt for every seat, meaning there's space for everyone
yeah,
here on this land. There's room for everyone. And the question is, what do you want? What do you see for yourself in 5 or 10 years? And I see great abundance. I see great things happening. We just got to get through this kind of difficult time of confusion and reorganization for basically everything, I think, on the earth. Hopefully I'm wrong, but You shared a lot of great information today, Tag. I want to thank you, sir, for sharing this amazing stuff. And I want to ask, is there any place we could find the ungovernable score Excel sheet, please?
Yeah.
Or is that MIA? Where is that thing?
Yeah, actually, if you go to lifedonefree.com, it's available for a free download right there. I don't ask your email address or anything because I don't care. You're welcome to use it, but understand, guys, it was built to be a game, and that's what we use it for, is gamification, and it's a great motivator, and that's why we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it creates a conversation amongst, the clan, the crew, the mag, the mind. How big was the mind again? So the mag was like, what?
So for me, it's about 1,100 people.
1,100 people. So that's the mutual aid group.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, and then the mind is like everything in total.
The mind is all the like-minded. It's all the Jim Gales, it's the Davids, it's all of these people that are, preaching it and going to these festivals. It's who I can market with.
Got it.
It's who we can build commerce with.
Got it. So the visionaries who are other places on the earth, who are on our vibration and frequency, and we're like, all right, we're going to share, we're going to learn, share best practices.
Yep.
Well, Tag, again, yeah, man. Hey, thank you so much for this great knowledge. I hope people go get the free download, see how ungovernable you are out there. I'm definitely going to go get it. But you also have a YouTube channel, and it was just a great joy to talk with you and share about your success and what you're doing and how you're leading the way. I think intentional neighborhoods is very exciting. I'm going to check out more of your videos and learn about this. So I hope people out there realize that when you're around good neighbors, good things happen. You get your house built in a couple days. You get to help each other. You have fires that get put out. I mean, what an exciting thing to have this type of support around you, not hours away, but 10 or 5 miles away. This is I think one of the uplifting things. So as we close out, any final words of wisdom or encouragement or anything out there for people who maybe are just finding you, or maybe just launching or starting or thinking about their own freesteading in the future?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is I'm easy to get a hold of. If you go to my YouTube channel, under the About section, my email address is in there, and I've responded to 100% of the emails I've ever gotten. I'm happy to have any of those conversations. But I think my parting words to everybody is, remember, you guys, we don't have to fight anybody. We just have to ignore them. And you just have to come to the conclusion that you're free, right? You have to put intentional steps. You got to do it on purpose. You can't sit around behind the scenes on being afraid of being put on some list. It's time to get in the fight, and I'd encourage you to do exactly that.
Absolutely. I agree with Tag. There's nothing to fight. We're just going to build, take a look in the mirror, start taking 100% responsibility. Understand you are not alone. Although I know as leaders, sometimes we feel alone, but this is life. And, you want to connect with as many soul brothers and sisters as you can. Go to events, find them online, and take initiative, be proactive, help people unload or load their corn feed at the store, and understand it's our responsibility to make new relationships. And there's a lot of people looking to make new powering relationships just like us. So I want to thank you for joining us on the Freedom Lovers Show, where we are building a voluntary world, one relationship at a time, one homestead at a time, and one intentional neighborhood at a time. I hope to see you guys again on the next show. Peace, love, and freedom. We'll see you again.
See you
Bye,
guys.
everybody.